Hi everyone, this is our first lecture in the analysis of the text of Waiting for Godot. Last time we arrived to page 34 and we stopped with the beginning of Lucky's speech. And you remember the speech of Lucky was kind of a reward that Godot set for Vladimir and Stragan for being kind to him. So he asked them whether they want Lucky to dance or to think, and Estragan asked for dancing, but Vladimir was much more concerned about thinking. So they asked him to let Lucky think, and as a requirement for that, you remember, mm, Pozzo asked them to put on his hat, to put the hat on his head. So as a requirement for him to start thinking. So the thinking or as of Lecky was kind of loud thinking. So it's kind of a speech. It's kind of a thinking that is um, translated into words. So that speech is kind of a long speech, and if you see the text, it's kind of extends over 2 pages of the text. Um, the speech of Lecky is kind of complicated and difficult to follow, and in order to make it easier for understanding, critics have divided it into 3 parts. So each part has its own theme, and he's speaking about one thing. And although the speech, for the most part, is not understandable and does not make much sense for most of the sentences that compose the speech, still there are things that make sense and that shed light on the overall themes of the play. So, primarily, we can say that the speech is divided into 3 parts. And the first part is kind of a philosophical argument about God and the existence of God, the attributes of, of God. The second part is about the human being and about the modern conditions of human beings in modern culture. The third part speaks about the earth and the environment. So these are the 3 parts that compose the speech of Lucky. So if we start with the first part, given the existence, as set forth in the public works of Punch and Waterman, of a personal God, quack, 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 you see that the speech has the form of philosophical argument. If you go to books of philosophy and books of theology, and when these books discuss arguments for the existence of God, they have a certain style. And Lucky here is using the same style, and it's kind of a parody. Parody is kind of satire, which like tries to imitate a high level style of writing by using a low level style of writing in order to kind of satirize and to show weaknesses and failings of that pretentious high level of style of writing. So you see that Lecky speaks as if he is a philosopher and he is putting forward an argument for the existence of God, so on. Okay. He mentions throughout the speech names that are fictitious. We might think that because he is putting forward a philosophical argument that he's making a reference to philosophers. But in fact, these are not philosophers. He's going to make a reference in the second part to Bishop Berkeley, and he's a philosopher, an English philosopher, and that's true. And in the in the French version of the speech, instead of Berkeley, he's making a reference to Voltaire, who's a real French philosopher. Apart from that, most of the names that are mentioned in the speech are fictitious names, names for people who do not exist. So, Lucky is speaking about a personal God, a God that is personal. God has a personal relationship with human beings, but later on, he's going to contradict this attribute of a personal God, and he is giving us attributes or features of a God that is impersonal. And the word qua is always used in philosophical argument, which means it's a Latin word that came to English, and it means being as that. and it is used in order to make arguments or to draw conclusions from argument. So he's using the word qua, 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 but he's using qua and repeating it 4 times, and he's repeating it here against as also a kind of parody. So instead of having the qua, which is a philosophical term, he's making it like a duck's um, um, sound, which is qua, qua, qua. Okay, so I'll start time without extension. So he is starting to giving us some features of that God about whom he's speaking. And he's saying that that God is outside time and without extension, out of space. So he's not limited by time and space. And so, who from the heights of divine apathia, divine athambia, divine aphasia is giving 3 attributes to that divine God. They are apathia, athambia, and aphasia. Apathia means a God that is not sympathetic to human beings. And you remember we have the word sympathy on the literal equivalent for sympathy is empathy. You remember we said when we empathize with the character, we come to feel what they feel, if they are sad or happy and so on. So when you empathize with the character, you kind of feel the same feeling that they do. Apathia is or apathy is the opposite of empathy. So if empathy is kind of feeling with others, apathy means not feeling with others. So he's speaking about a God who does not feel what a human feels, sorry. Divine athambia, and athambia means indifferent or calm or not affected, not easily excited or upset. So we are speaking about a God who is not different. Who's indifferent, who does not care about like humans. Okay, he's kind of self-sufficient and he's not in need for the existence of humans. So the existence of humans is quite irrelevant to him. He's quite indifferent to human beings. Undefined aphasia. Aphasia is kind of a disease in which patients are unable to communicate. It's kind of a disease that you might have studied about in psycholinguistics. Aphasia is something that with when we have aphastic patients, they are unable to use language properly and to communicate with others. So when we speak about divine aphasia, it means we are speaking about a God who does not communicate with human beings. So it's not concerned about communicating with human beings. So these 3 features, divine apathia, divine athambia, and divine aphasia, are quite in contrary to the image of a personal God. So he started with painting a picture of personal God, but he then moved on to contradict that picture by saying that that God is outside time and outside space. So, and human beings are limited by time and space. And so, like, there's no connection whatsoever between human beings and that God. So, what that God is, according to these attributes, impersonal. He is quite impersonal. He's not the personal God that he started the argument with. So these 3 features also are in contradiction with the image of God in Christian theology. In Christian theology and in all other religions, God is quite empathetic to people, to humans. Why he feels what they feel. He is not indifferent. Rather, he's much more. He's caring. He is concerned about his creatures, and also he's not a fast. He's communicating with people. He's sending to them messages and messengers and holy books and so on. So these are in stark contradiction to the image of the Christian God or God of other religions for that sake. Loves us dearly. This is another thing about that God. God loves us dearly with some exceptions. So he does not love all humans. He loves some humans for reasons unknown. So the question, why does he love some humans and not others? There should be a justification, but according to Lucky, for reasons unknown. So this is also in contradiction to the idea of a fair and just God. Like If God is just and fair, how does he love some people and not others without a reason? If there is a reason, that's quite reasonable. But according to this, there is no reason or reasons unknown. So this is also, if you remember, this is touching on a theme that was running through the play all along. If you remember the story of the two thieves, the play was about this idea. One of the ideas the play was discussing the idea um, of justification, why some people are damned and why some people are saved. According to this, there is no reason. Okay, and you remember the story of the two thieves. One of the thieves was damned and the other was saved. And they are both thieves. So the question why, you remember the question that Vladimir was asking, why is one of the thieves damned and why was the other thieves saved? There is no reason. Okay, so here it is kind of the same thing. It's kind of the same theme that was introduced earlier in the play with the story of the two thieves, that God loves us dearly, with some exceptions for reasons unknown. That there are people who are saved and there are people who are damned. And the expectation is that this is quite justified. So the idea that we think that these differences are quite justifiable, are quite kind of reasonable, logical, or there are some people who are saved and others who are damned, but according to the picture that is presented here, there is no justification. It's just kind of arbitrary. It's just kind of random thing that is happening, that some people are saved without clear reason, and other peoples are damned also without unclear reason. And there is another incident in Act 1 that we are going to touch upon soon later, which also indicates the same thing. So um, um, this is the main idea of first part, that he's speaking about God. He's presenting a philosophical argument about the existence of a personal God, but then he goes on to give some attributes that contradict the existence of a personal God. And so we have a God who is apathetic, like he is not feeling with us, okay, and is apambic, like he is indifferent, doesn't care, is not affected by everything that humans do or do not do, and aphatic, like he is um, not able to communicate with human beings, okay, and also that kind of God is arbitrary, like he just decides to save some people and to damn other people without clear reasons. So this is the main idea of the first part. The second part starts from here when he speaks, and you see that these parts are not very clearly marked in the speech, but rather just for the sake of clarity, they have been the speech has been divided into parts. But in fact, as a kind of speech is just continuous and just one part. But in order to understand it, we have decided to divide it into three parts. So in the second part, he's speaking about the academy of anthropometry. And anthropometry is the science of measurement. So he speaks about measurements, okay? And you see how he goes on and on that speech, which is not very much sensible, like Easy and Posse of Testo and Conrad, and these are also fictive names. It is established beyond all doubt, and this is quite a form of the philosophical arguments that we see in books of philosophy and theology or other doubts, and that which clings to the labors of men, and that the result of labors and finish of test and Penguin, blah blah blah, established are in after, but also as fast reasons unknown. So you see, always he keeps on um, like um, uh, repeating this phrase for reasons unknown. Okay, that is much a result of public works of venture and what man established beyond all doubt, that whether you see the repetition, that does not make too much sense. Okay, labors furtive, uh, Belcher left unfinished for reasons unknown, of Tester and Conrad left unfinished. You see how he's going, how cyclical this speech is. Like, to establish what many deny, that man possesses just on Conrad, that man in poesy, that man in short, that man in brief, in spite of strides of limitation and defecation, waste and pines. Okay, so he is saying that the human being, the modern human being, is dwindling, is shrinking. Okay, so it's getting smaller and smaller when he speaks about modern man. That's why he used the word short, the word brief, okay, the word wastes, and the word finds. Finds like weakens, and somebody who's kind of loses strength and goes from weak to weaker to weaker and so on. Okay, so this is the condition of the human being, okay, of the modern human being, okay. Simultaneously, what is more, for reasons unknown, in spite of this fight of physical culture, the practice of sports such as tennis, football, running, and he goes on to mention a list of sports, modern sports: tennis, football, running, cycling, swimming, flying, floating, um, riding, gliding, knitting, and blah, 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 all kinds of dying, flying sports of all sorts: autumn, summer, winter tennis of all kinds, of hockey of all sorts, penicillin, and sexodenia, in a word, I resume, flying, gliding, golf, and so on. So, um, the main argument of the second part of the speech is that um, the human being, the modern human being, is shrinking and dwindling and getting smaller and getting weaker, in spite of two things that are supposed to make man stronger. And these two things are the modern physical culture and the invention of sports. These sports are supposed to be making man stronger, but in spite of that, man is getting weaker. And the other thing, in spite of which man is getting weaker, is the invention of modern medicine. Okay, so penicillin and sexidenium, these are kind of drugs. So the invention of medicine, the invention of these modern drugs, is supposed to make man stronger, but in spite of that, man is getting weaker. So you see, always he's mentioning the word in spite of. So in spite of sports, in spite of medicine, these things that are supposed to make man stronger, in spite of all these things, man or modern man is getting weaker and weaker and weaker. Okay, and so you see that he mentions here the seasons: autumn, summer, winter tennis. We are expecting a cycle of the season. So when he says autumn, summer, winter, we're expecting spring as well. But he does not go on to mention spring, but rather he mentions winter. Okay, so as if it's kind of a cycle that does not end. Okay, a cycle that is not closed. And this is a symbol for the play itself. Like it begins, but it does not end. It does not go a full cycle. And you see this kind of repetition that is going on. And even with the kind of sports, some sports, like by themselves, are repetitious. Like with tennis and even with golf, like we have a ball that goes from one side to the other, okay, and that does not stop at a certain point. So this is also repetitious, and if you pay attention to the speech itself, like all the speech is repetitious. It just starts and does not finish. And when he says the work unfinished, and he kind of refers to the play itself, because the play itself is a kind of a work that is not finished. Okay, so we have a plot that, as you remember, we said it begins, but it does not end, or starts to the same beginning. It's not like with the classical little works when we have a beginning and a middle and end. And later on, he mentions Bishop Berkeley, and this is one of few names of the real philosophers that he mentions here in the speech. And the theme of the second part of the speech is quite relevant to Bishop Berkeley, because Berkeley was kind of suggesting a relativity theory, a primitive relativity theory um, that you can see different things differently depending on where you stand and depending on where the things are standing. So it's kind of similar to the idea of Einstein, but not with that mathematical complexity with the relativity theory that Einstein has put forward. So the idea of man getting smaller and getting weaker and like shrinking and dwindling and so on is also relevant to the philosophy of Bishop Berkeley, who is quite a famous English philosopher. Okay, so he goes and on, and now we enter the third part. But as I said, these parts are not like divided by any graphological means, like not each part like starts with a new paragraph, but rather we have a continuous speech that goes on and on and on. But rather to make things easier for us to understand, we have divided it into three parts. And you remember we said that the third part speaks about the earth and the environment. And so when he's Turing and Pochman, and also these are words or fictitious words of the names of philosophers. It appears what is more, much more grave than in the light. You see the repetition of the labors lost Turing and Pochman, that in the plains and the mountains, by the seas, by the rivers, running water, running fire and air are the same, and then the earth, namely the air, and then the earth, the great cold, the great dark, the air and the earth, abode of stones and great cold. So he's speaking about the environment, about earth, and the picture that he gives here is not different from the picture that he gave in part one and part two. The picture that he's giving here is quite dark and quite gloomy. So he's speaking about the plains, the mountains, the seas, the rivers, and so on. And he's giving us images not of life, but rather of death. So we have the word cold, which is a symbol for death, um, which is the opposite of heat, which is a symbol for life, and dark, which is also a symbol for death, um, an opposite to the light, which is a symbol of life, okay, and the earth. And also stones, you remember we said that stone is a symbol for death. You remember in um, Death of Salesman when Howard was saying to Willie Loman, you cannot squeeze blood out of stone. Okay, so like stone is something dead, and you cannot get something alive out of something dead, which is to which stone is the best symbol. So in the third part, then he's speaking about the environment, and the picture that he gives about the environment is quite gloomy, it's quite dark, it's quite dead. Okay, alas, alas, in the year of their Lord 600 and something, the sea, the earth, abode of stones, and you see, it goes on and on and on. And the further he goes in the speech, if you read that, you see the less articulate, the less coherent the speech becomes. Like um, when we spoke about aphasia or aphasia, which is the inability to communicate, and this is a feature that Lucky um, demonstrates literally, because his speech is kind of aphagic speech, like like the speech of a person who is diseased, who is inflicted with aphasia. Like it does not make much sense. It's kind of a series of sentences and phrases that are mostly unfinished, that are um, very weakly connected with each other, and that make little sense to the hearer. And this is what is happening, exactly what is happening with the speech of Lucky. Okay, so if you read, for example, from here, in spite of the tennis on the beard of the flames, the tears, the stones so blue, so calm, alas, alas, on the skull, the skull, the skull, the skull. And Connemara, and Connemara is a country in Ireland, which is quite cold, which is quite cold, and that's why he mentioned like when human beings are naked and they are need clothing, so on. In spite of the tennis, the labours abandoned, left and finished, graver still abode of stones. In a word, you resume, alas, alas, abandoned and finished, the skull, and Connemara. In spite of the tennis, the skull, alas, the stones can rot, and he goes, the stones, so calm, can rot and finish. And Pozo is quite fed up. He wants him to stop, and he says his hat. And you remember, it's kind of his hat is like the on-off button, which like enables him to speak. And so, in order to make him stop speaking, they need to take off his hat. So that's why um, Pozo shouts his hat, and Vladimir sees it like his heart silence of Lucky. He falls silence, putting of the victor. So what Vladimir does is that he goes to Lucky, takes the hat off, and immediately Lucky kind of turns off and or switches off, and he falls down. Okay, and now it is kind of silence, and Estragan says avenged. Okay, so you remember previously he kicked Lucky kicked Estragan and hurt him in the leg. So now when Lucky falls down, he says that I'm avenged. Okay, so Vladimir examines the heart and fears or looks inside it. Give me that, and he takes the heart. Also, there is an end to this thinking, but will he be able to walk, crawl? And he says to him, big, uh, um, um, like raise up, okay, or stand up. Perhaps he's dead. You'll kill him. Okay, up, scam. Do you see the kind of words that Pozzo's using in order to speak to Lucky? How raise him up? They try to raise him up, but he falls down. And this again says he's doing it on purpose. You see, Sagan is quite angry with Lucky, and he always explains or interprets Lucky's action in a very negative way. You must hold him. And to hell with him, Spraggan says. He's quite angry with him. Okay, come on, once more. Vladimir wants to help Lucky, but Spraggan, because of the kick, he's quite angry, and he does not sympathize with Lucky anymore. Okay, what does he take us for? Okay, and so Pozo's kind of giving them instructions how to help Lucky to stand up. And well, Lucky stands up and turns. Okay, now he's quite okay. Okay, and well, after Lucky stands up, Pozo's looking for his like seems his watch. Okay, gave it to me. Okay, Vladimir Instagram. Likewise, Pozo turns over with his food on the remains of Lucky's heart. Well, now isn't that just perhaps it's a new form? Okay, wait, and he doubles up in the attempt to apply his ear to his stomach and listens. I hear nothing. Okay, surely one should hear the tick-tock and silence. Okay, so they don't hear anything. It's just silence. And this one says, I hear something. And where is the beat? Okay, damnation, science, silence. So there's no sound of the tick-tock. Okay, and this one says, perhaps it has stopped. You remember when they were speaking about time that has stopped. So and you remember we said that time is something which is not quite real, and so even the tick-tock of the clock is or the watch is not real. Okay, but kind of indicates time. So when the watch has stopped, it means time has stopped. Okay, but well, which of you smells so bad? He is saying. He's kind of Pozo changes the topic and is asking them who of them is smelling bad. It seems both uh, do. Okay. So Estragan answers, he has stinking breath, and I have stinking feet. And do you remember he speaks about Vladimir as having stinking breath, and do you remember because Vladimir eats garlic because of his kidneys. Okay, and um, you remember Estragan because of his boots, he has stinking feet. And the poser says, I must go, and you'll have enter, I must have left it in the manor, then adieu, and no one moves. Okay, so you remember when you spoke about the disintegration of language, that language should kind of correspond to the words, like when somebody says adieu or goodbye, they should be moving, but now everyone is saying goodbye, but no one is moving, and this is something that's going to be repeated later at the end of the um, scene at the end of the act. Okay, and they again do silence. Thank you, not at all. Yes, yes, no, yes, yes. So it's just like um, in this kind of throwing words um, to each other, like it's just like they do in tennis, like when you throw a ball to on the other player and the other player just returns the ball to you. So the conversation and waiting for Godot is just like throwing balls in a tennis game, which does not make too much sense. Okay. And Poster says I don't seem to be able to depart. And Estragan says to him, such is life. So such is life really for Estragan and Vladimir. They cannot do anything. And like it is a contagion, like it's kind of a disease that is passing from one person to another. Like the time that Pozo has spent with Vladimir Estragan, he has been kind of affected by that, and as if it is a disease with which he has been infected. So just like Vladimir Estragan cannot move, cannot do anything. So Pozo here says like I'm not I don't seem be able to depart, and for Estragan's quite normal, such is life. Okay, so their life has been um, like this all the time. Pozo turns and moves away from Lucky towards the wings and pulling the rope as he goes. You are going the wrong way. I need the running start. And he speaks to Lucky. Stand back. Sorry to start. Vladimir. This again. Stand back toward Pozo. Crock of whip on. Okay. And he goes on, and he faster he's speaking to Lucky, and Vladimir again wave their hearts, so as kind of saying goodbye, and Lucky exits on. Okay, he speaks about his tool and adieu, goodbye, and up big. Okay, so it seems like he has fallen down, and now he's getting about again on. Okay, faster on and do big. Adieu, he says goodbye, and long silence, he leaves. So now, Pozo and Lucky leave the stage. Lucky leaves first, and then Pozo next, and then we are left just with Vladimir and Sragan alone on stage, just as the play started. So Vladimir, that passed the time. It is useful because it passed the time, okay? And for estrogen, it would have passed in any case. So you remember we said previously that everything that they are doing is just doing to avoid facing the dilemma, the existential condition that they are free. They need to think of a solution for themselves. Everything they are doing is just like trying to avoid doing that, and so they try to pass the time in any way. Okay, so the influence of pause on lucky was useful for them because it passed the time, but for Instagram, time would have passed in any way, okay, but not so rapidly. And you remember this is kind of an illusion because you remember previously we said that you don't really pass the time. Time is passing anyway. Okay, so whether you do something, whether you do not do anything, time is just passing. Time is not waiting for you. And even when we say that time has passed rapidly or slowly or boringly or interestingly and so on, this is kind of a more or less subjective experience of time. Time is passing with the same pace. If there is a pace for time, but it's our experience of events that make us or makes us think of them as passing the time rapidly or slowly. So when we do something that we are interested in, we say the time is passing quickly. When we do something that is tedious or boring, we think of time as passing slowly. And so time is not passing quickly nor slowly, but rather kind of our experience of time that is making us think that way. And so now they return to the same question. This is kind of horrifying question. What do we do now? This is the question. Okay, so when Pozo and Lucky were there, this question did not arise. They just need to stand aside and watch what is going on. Okay, respond if they are spoken to, raise some questions if they have any, and that's it. Okay, but now that they are alone and there is nobody else to help them pass the time, now it is their turn to decide of something that they should do in order to pass the time. That's why we said this is a very scary, very horrifying question for them. Now, what do we do? I don't know. Let's go. Cannot. Why not? We're waiting for Godot. So it's always Estragan that is forgetting why they are here. And it's always the role of Vladimir to remind him of the purpose. We are waiting for Godot. How have they have changed? Who? And so, like this, these moments, no matter how brief they are, have helped Pause and Lucky to change. Okay, so who? These two. That's the idea. Let's make a little conversation. So, or even the conversation is not just to exchange ideas or do something useful. It's just about like passing the time. Okay, so let's do a conversation for no other sake, just to pass the time. Okay, so haven't they what changed? Very likely, they all change. Only we cannot. Okay, and this is very interesting because you remember we spoke about the effect of time, and this is something that we are going to discuss in much detail later. That time changes us. Like this is something that is related to identity and the question of whether our identity remains stable over long periods of time, or we change, or our identity changes. Okay, so when you do something, you are going to change, and time changes you. But and Estragan says very rightly, maybe like very likely they have changed. They all change. Every one changes. Only we cannot. And the reason they cannot, because for them time has stopped. Okay, so this is one aspect of the influence of time on the identity of people. They all change, only we cannot. Likely, it's certain. Didn't you see them? I suppose I did, but I don't know them. You don't know them? I know I don't know them. We know them, I tell you. You forget you everything, okay, unless they are not the same. Okay, so he says that I forgot about them. Like when they enter a game, they maybe in the next arc, Vladimir and Astragan have a difficulty in recognizing again pots on the lucky, and the reason unless they are not the same. So they are not the same. Like um, time will pass on them and time is going to change them. And so when they appear again, they're not the same people who appeared today. Like the poisoned lucky who are going to appear tomorrow are not the poisoned lucky who appear today. It's just like Vladimir and Istragan, who are not changing because for them time has stopped. Okay, why didn't they recognize us then? Okay, that means nothing. I too pretended not to recognize them, and then nobody ever recognizes us. Okay, forget it. What we need, unless they are not the same. And Vladimir, you see, is raising this very interesting idea, which I think Ashragan is not able to comprehend. Didi is the other food, unless they are not the same. Okay, so Vladimir just wants to keep speaking about that. He wants to weigh in on that idea, but it seems he's always interrupted. Previously, he was interrupted by Estragan, but now he's interrupted by a new character who is a boy. So while Vladimir and Estragan are alone, another character or another actor enters the stage and he says, Mr. and he's off. So he's not on the stage yet. He's off stage, he's not seen to the audience, only his voice is being heard, and he says, Mister. And so they are kind of surprised that somebody is speaking to them. Off we go again, approach my child. The Vladimir seems has seen the boy and he's asking him to come close. Mr. Albert, yes, what do you want? And this is another confusing thing. Like we know that he is Vladimir. We didn't know that he's called Albert before. So, yes, what do you want? Approach. Estragan, approach when you are told, can't you? And the boy advances timidly. So the boy seems afraid, maybe from Estragan this time. What is it, Mr. Godot? So it seems the boy has some message from Mr. Godot, obviously. Approach. Will you approach? Estragan turns violent with the boy, okay? And the boy advances timidly. What went What kept you so late? You have a message from Mr. Godot? Yes, sir. Well, what is it? What kept you so late? So, Esragan is busy interrogating the boy of why he's late instead of being interested in knowing what the message of Mr. Godot is. Okay, so the boy looks at them, not knowing to what he should reply because they both speak at the same time. He does not know whom he should answer. Okay, and Vladimir is angry with this dragon. He says, "Let him alone. Okay, you let me alone. Okay, do you know what time is it? It is. It's not my fault, sir. I was I was afraid, sir. Afraid of what? Um, I know what it is. He is afraid of the others. Of Vladimir, sorry, of Pose and Lucky. How long have you been here? A good while. Okay, you were afraid of the whip that was with Pozo. Yes, sir. The rose. Yes, sir. Okay, that the two big men. Yes, sir. Do you know them? No, sir. Are you a native of these parts? So they keep like asking him irrelevant questions. Do you belong to these parts? Yes, sir. That's all a pack of lies. Okay, tell us the truth. But it is the truth, sir. Okay. Will you let him alone? What's the matter with you? Okay, so now Vladimir like lets the boy alone, and Vladimir says, "I'm unhappy." Not really. Since when? I've forgotten. And this is quite interesting because you don't forget when what time you were unhappy. Okay, and Vladimir says, "Extraordinary the tricks that memory plays." Okay, so memory is an important theme also in the play, and we're going to speak about that later. And memory is related to time because um, we remember things that are um, associated with a certain time tag. Otherwise, we'd not remember things. Okay, if there is no time, then there is no memory. And later on, we see that just like time, we think of memory as being objective, that we remember the things as they happen. But in reality, no, we don't remember the things that they happen, but rather we remember the things according to the kind of emotions that we associated or attached to these events at the time that they happened. Okay, so we don't tend to remember everything, but rather we remember the things that made us too happy or too sad and so on. So memory is kind of a very complicated thing, and memory is also related to identity because it's what you remember about yourself that makes up the sum of your identity. And so the boy wants to goes on and wants to complete the message of Mr. Godot. Mr. Godot, I've seen you before, haven't I? You see how they touch on irrelevant things. Okay, I don't know, sir. You don't know me, no, sir. It wasn't you who came yesterday, no, sir. Um, and this is another thing that is related to identity and time. Um, they say that, according to Vladimir Ansragan, the boy has come yesterday, and they are asking if it were the same boy that came yesterday, and the boy says, "No, it's not me." And also, the boy is not able to remember Vladimir Ansragan, and maybe because everyone has changed, like the boy has changed, and Estragan and Vladimir have also changed because of the uh, influence of time. Okay, so this is your first time? He says, yes. And now you see the difference that they think that they have met the boy, and um, well, it turns out that they did not. And this thing will also happen in Act 2 when the boy comes again. And so they will ask him, did you come yesterday? And the boy says, no. And so it just goes on and on like that. And Vladimir says, words, words. And this is a kind of parody of Shakespeare's Hamlet. And this is a very famous phrase for Hamlet when he says words, words, words. When Polonius asks him, what are you reading, my lord? Hamlet replies, words, words, words. Okay, so now instead of repeating it three times, Vladimir repeats the word word two times. Okay, so the boy, Mr. Godot, told me to tell you he won't come this evening, but surely tomorrow. Okay, and since this is the message that was repeated yesterday. So yesterday, since there was a boy, and the boy was kind of conveying the same message that Mr. Godot is not coming today, but coming tomorrow. And also, the next act, he is going to give the exactly the same message that Mr. Godot is not coming today, and he's coming tomorrow. And We have to expect this cycle of pattern, this pattern that to be repeated every time the boy shows up, like he's saying to them, um, Mr. Godot's not coming today, but rather he's coming tomorrow. Is that all? Yes, sir. And now they ask him, you work for Mr. Godot? Yes, sir. What do you do? I mind the goats, sir. Is he good to you? Yes, sir. So it seems the boy was working for Mr. Godot. He doesn't beat you. No, sir, not me. Whom does he beat? He beats my brother. Ah, you have a brother? Yes, sir. What does he do? He minds the sheep. So it seems both the boy and his brother work for Mr. Godot. The boy minds the goats and his brother minds the sheep. Okay, it seems that um, okay, uh, it seems that Godot beats his brother, but not beat that boy. And now Vladimir is asking him a very interesting question. Why doesn't he beat you? I don't know, sir. And this is another example of this arbitrariness of damnation and salvation. Like, you remember, it's just like with the story of the two thieves, like one of the thieves was damned and the other was saved. And do you remember just a moment ago we explained about Lucky's speech when he says that God loves us dearly for reasons, with some exceptions for reasons unknown. Like the same pattern is repeated here. Like with Godot, he has two boy brothers that are working for him. One is minding the goats and the other is minding the sheep. And he beats one of the brothers and not the other. And also for reasons unknown. That's why Vladimir is kind of very interested in that question, why? The question of why. Why are some people saved? Why are other people damned? Why somebody is tortured? Why somebody is not tortured? Why somebody is leading a happy life? Why somebody is not leading a happy life? And the answer is unknown. I don't know. And this is exactly the same answer that Lucky gave a moment ago in his speech when he says, for reasons unknown. And you remember Lucky was repeating that phrase time and time again. Okay, so you see the play from the beginning with the story of the two thieves, and then to Lucky's thinking or Lucky's oration or speech, and now with the story of the two boys. It's quite the same pattern that is repeated one time and again, which is like people are damned and are saved for reasons unknown. It's quite not logical, it's arbitrary. This is a pattern that you have to pay attention to in the play. So Vladimir, he must be fond of you. I don't know, sir. So there is no reason. They try to get a reason, okay, but it's quite disappointing. It's quite frustrating that there is no reason. And you remember, like, you remember we said that reasons are important because reasons invest meaning. And you remember we always look for plots, not stories. Like, um, you always look for plot because and plot events are related with cause and effect relationship. Like always in plot, we have the answer for the question why. Okay, with story, there's no cause and result relationship. It's just like a chronological relationship. That this event happened and then the next event happened after the first one and so on. But it does not say anything about why. But with the plot, we have the invention of the answer for the question why. Okay, but so Vladimir and Sergen are looking, and mainly Vladimir is looking for the answer of why. He's trying to make sense of what is going on, but um, time and again he's frustrated, he's disappointed, he's not given the answer. Okay, so you remember they were trying to um, this is something about every one of us. You remember we every one of us is trying to turn their life from a story to a plot, to invest it with meaning, to say that there is meaning, that there is a purpose, that there is an end for what is going on. But Vladimir and Sergen are trying to turn their life from a story to a plot, but unfortunately, every time they try, they get disappointed. Okay, so you see, Vladimir is keeping asking the question. He's even suggesting some possible answers, but to his disappointment, it's always I don't know for reasons unknown. Okay, So he keeps asking, does he give you enough food? And the boy says, yes. Okay. Well, I don't know if you are not happy. They're asking him about his feelings. And the boy says, I do not know whether I'm happy or not happy, or when I tend to be unhappy. It's quite the same answer that Estragon has given. Okay. So um, you are as bad as myself, Vladimir says to him. Where do you sleep? Okay, in the low cell with your brother, yes, sir, in the bay, yes, sir. All right, you may go. What am I to tell Mr. Godot? So, what is the reply I should convey to Mr. Godot? Tell him you saw us. Okay, you did see us. You too, didn't you? Yes, sir. And so the boy like leaves. Okay, so and again, Vladimir and Sergen are alone on the stage. Okay, so well, what are you doing, Sergen? Well, um, um, so um, when the boy has left, okay, he steps back, hesitates, turns, and exits running. The light suddenly fades. Okay, in a moment, it is night. So the setting has turned from evening to night. The moon rises at back, mounts in the sky, stands still, shedding a pale light on the unseen. So now we have the appearance of the moon. Vladimir at last. You remember Vladimir was asking repeatedly, when will night come? Okay, and now that night has come, okay, he is in a relief at last. And Sergeant gets up and goes towards Vladimir, boot in each hand. He puts them down at the edge of stage, strengthens and contemplates the moon. He's looking at the moon. And Vladimir is asking, what are you doing? Pale for awareness. Huh? Of climbing heaven and gazing on the light of us. So it's just like poetry, like he's speaking about the moon, like the moon is pale for weariness. Okay, so like it's kind of giving some human features to the moon. Okay, and the way he speaks about the moon as if he's climbing heaven. You see the metaphor that he's using, how beautiful they are, and gazing as if the moon is gazing, which in fact it is not, because it's not human, and gazing on the light of us. Okay, so your boots, what are you doing with your boots? And and he says, so Estrogan says that I will leave them here. Maybe somebody else will come with smaller feet and they would help him. Okay, but you cannot go barefoot like Christ did. Christ, what has Christ to do with it? You are not going to compare yourself to Christ. Aristotle says, all my life I've compared myself to him. You remember previously when Pozo asked him, what's your name? He said Adam, and now he was comparing himself to Adam, and now he is comparing himself to Christ. But where he lived was it was warm, because Christ lived in the Middle East and it was warm. It's not cold as the place they are living in. Okay, and they crucified quick. We have nothing more to do here. Then you see that every time they have a relief that somebody enters and helps them to pass the time, because it helps them to avoid asking this question, what should we do now? Okay, so now they return back to this horrifying question. We have nothing to do now, nor anywhere else. So it's not about the place, okay, or here. Okay, it's not about here that you have nothing to do here, and maybe if they go somewhere else, they will have something to do. It's not about the place, but rather it's something about themselves, nor anywhere else. So wherever they are, they will have nothing to do. Go, don't go like that tomorrow. Everything will be better. How do you make that out? Okay, did you not hear what the child said? No, he said that Godot was sure to come tomorrow. Okay, then all we have to do is to wait on here. So Vladimir is more in belief that Godot is coming tomorrow. Estragan, although he is the simpler, he is the less the least intelligent among them, he does not buy in that promise that Godot is coming tomorrow. But Vladimir is saying tomorrow everything will be better. And this is also another kind of illusion that people are creating for themselves in order to make the suffering of life more bearable. Because um, the question is, why should everything be better tomorrow? There's no reason why everything should be better tomorrow, but you always kind of think or try to convince yourself that tomorrow is going to be better. But there's no reason tomorrow is going to be better. Maybe tomorrow is going to be worse. But it's kind of a fiction. It's kind of a useful fiction that we um, tell each tell each other and tell ourselves. Okay, but it is a lie. But it's a lie that kind of functional. It's kind of useful for us because it helps us to have some hope. Because if we think that tomorrow is going to be just like today, or maybe even worse than today, it becomes impossibly difficult to live in that way. So we always tell ourselves, we always like try to believe this illusion that tomorrow everything will be better. And this kind of the illusion that Vladimir is kind of buying in, but we see Estragon is not very much convinced of that. Okay, so because tomorrow is going to be better, because Godot is going tomorrow, so tomorrow is going to be better, so we don't need to do anything today because um, it's all going to be done when Godot will show up. Okay, are you mad? We must um, take cover because Estragon is suggesting that they will spend the night here, and Vladimir is arguing that it's very cold here, so they need some cover. They need to gather themselves out the cold. And so, pity we haven't got a bit of rope. Come, cold. Remind me to bring a bit of rope tomorrow. Yes, come on. Okay, how long have we been together all the time? I don't know, 50 years maybe. Okay, do you remember the day I threw myself in the Rhone, the river? Okay, we were grape harvesting. They speak of a sort of history of themselves, because you see that we don't know anything about these characters. Like, we don't know what they used to be in the past, and we see them now, and they give us information which we are not sure whether to believe or not. And so now, one piece of information that they are giving that they were grape harvesting, it seems that one day Israel himself in the river, and it seems Vladimir kind of fished him out. Okay, that's all dead and buried. And so Vladimir says to him, like, there's no use of remembering these past things. Okay, so wait, and Vladimir says, I'm cold. Wait, and Estragon says, wait. I sometimes wonder if we wouldn't have been better off alone, each one for himself. So Estragon is raising the idea that it might be better for them to get separated from each other, not stay together again. And Vladimir says, well, it's not certain whether it is that we are better off together or separated. Okay. And Vladimir, no, nothing's certain, and this is quite embodies what's going on in the play, that in which nothing's certain. And Vladimir, we can still part if you think it would be better. There's no difference. Okay, we can keep. Sorry, each one can go away from far from the other. It's not worthwhile now. Okay, no, it's not worthwhile now. And Estragon, well, shall we go? Vladimir, yes, let's go. And they do not move. And this is the end of Act 1. So this is the disintegration of language that they always say we are going to do something, but they do not do that thing. And if you have heard in linguistics, like the theory of speech acts, like um, how to do things with words, like words are not only used to tell information, but also to reform action. But in this play, words, just like anything else, disintegrate and words do not lead to action. Okay, so we expect when somebody is saying, yeah, well, shall we go? We are expecting them to say, tell them to leave. Okay, and Vladimir agrees, or let's go. We are expecting them to leave, but to our disappointment, they do not move. So this is the end of Act 1 of the play. As I've said before, Act 2 is just like a repetition. There are some changes, of course, of in Act 2 that happened, which are different from Act 1. We are going to touch upon these um, shortly and briefly, but after that, we are going to start reading some criticism about the play. So this would be the end of this lecture. Thank you very much and have a good day.